My name is Giselle, and this is Slow Food Live. Slow Food Live is a project of Slow Food USA. If you are not already familiar with Slow Food is a global grassroots movement that advocates for good, clean, and fair food for all. Slow Food USA is the the US Association of Slow Food International. And we encourage you to jump online and learn more about slow food if you're not already well informed about what we do and what's important to us. Let's get started. This is the third of our series with 10 Speed Press and Clarkson Potter. I'm really excited. We have such amazing authors and people joining us for this. And today we have Andrea, who's going to teach us all about rice paper. I'm going to let Andrea tell you more about herself. She's written many cookbooks and has been in the food space for a long time. And I'm really excited to learn from you, Andrea. I'm really excited to have you here. So I'm going to hand it over to you to tell everybody a little more about yourself and get us going.
Hey, thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name is Andrea Nguyen. I am a cookbook author and a journalist, as well as a cooking teacher, and I consult sometimes too. But you know what? I give advice to people all the time. So I guess you would call me like a serial cookbook author. I've written 6 cookbooks. I've edited also a biography cookbook about Paula Wolfert, which if you're a slow foodie, you know who she is in terms of Mediterranean cooking, Middle Eastern cooking. I focus mainly my work on Asian cooking. So I've written cookbooks on Vietnamese cooking and foodways, also in broad terms like Asian dumplings or Asian tofu, because all of these subjects have stories. And I think that food without context tastes like really nothing, right? You need stories, you need to understand where the food comes from, its history, who makes it, and how it got to your table. So today, we're going to focus on something that is very much uniquely Vietnamese. Vietnamese food has a lot of ideas that are borrowed. So you hear about the French influence on Vietnam. You hear about the Chinese influence on Vietnam, the South Asian influence on Vietnam, and also the American influence on Vietnam. But rice paper is something that is kind of like uniquely Vietnamese. And so a lot of people have issues pronouncing Vietnamese terms. It's okay, your Vietnamese is probably a little rusty, but how you say rice paper is bánh tráng. So this particular brand here that you see a lot of times in regular American grocery stores, when you see those terms, and I know it's like backwards right now, right? But actually down in my board, you can see it like right side up. And so it's bánh. Bánh means anything that is made with a flour, starch, legume, and it could be a crepe, it could be a bread, it could be a cake, it could be a dumpling. Those are all bánh. It's kind of like the Chinese term bing, but tráng means to spread something. So bánh tráng literally means some kind of cake, crepe, bread, dumpling thing that is spread. So, you know, it is this thing that is traditionally made of rice. And when my family came to the United States in 1975, there was no rice paper at the American grocery store. And we would have to go to a Chinese market or a Vietnamese market. Back in 1975, and we were refugees from Vietnam. I was born in Saigon. We would have to drive like about 3 hours total round trip to a Chinese market and buy groceries. And one of them was rice paper, because you can't really eat a lot of Vietnamese food without rice paper because it is ubiquitous as a wrap. And so on my first trip back to Vietnam in 2002, 2003, end of 2002, beginning 2003, I was like really hell-bent on checking in on 2 ingredients. First, fish sauce, and the other one was bánh tráng, rice paper. And I took some snapshots of an artisanal rice paper maker. And Giselle, I was hoping that we could bring that up. And so you can like take these food tours in Vietnam. And so this is a woman who sits like that. She squats like that every day, making rice paper, and hers are gigantic. And so you'll see as we're moving through these slides. So here she is, she's picking up the rice paper, which is at this point just a sheet of rice batter that is steamed very thinly on a cloth. And she uses that woven bamboo hat thing up there. It's a lid to cover it up. And for probably just like about a minute before she lifts it. And when she lifts it, she's using a very thin stick that she slides right underneath there to pick up that rice paper. And then she will set it on that kind of other thing that you see to the left there that has like sort of, it looks like a waffle thing, but it's actually just shadows coming through. So Giselle, let's move to the next thing. Okay, so then this is how she prepares the batter in terms of grinding up her rice. So she told me that she makes rice paper for sale at her to her local markets and her small community on a daily basis. And she does it pretty old school in the sense that she is soaking her own rice. And, you know, this particular product only has like rice, water, salt, traditionally. And so she chooses her rice very, very carefully. It can't be too chewy. It can't be too dry. She soaks it, she grinds it. This is a stone grinder, and it is a wet grind, so she's making a batter. And then eventually she will put some fermented batter from previous batches in there to make just the right consistency for what she wants. And I was like, well, so, you know, did you always grind by machine? And she's like, no, are you kidding, sister? I used to have to do it by hand. Or, you know, people would have to like use animals to help. This is arduous work. And so every day she makes this batter, feeds it with some of the old stuff, or just the right, just like kind of like a sourdough. Okay, let's move on, Giselle. So here is where the jang part, the spreading part happens. And look at what she's using. It's totally, you know, that thing is like probably homemade or somebody made it for her. It really allows her to like spread that batter really thinly. I think that sheet of rice, it's a rice sheet is what we would call it. But ut means wet. So that is probably about 18 inches wide. So that is, she makes a very, very unusual product because, as you know, from what we see at the supermarket, most rice paper is about the size of a small flour tortilla. And so she spreads that batter on, and then she's going her hands on the lid that then she would put on top. And that's a very thin piece of fabric. Underneath it, it's a cauldron of water. She sits there, and I asked her, does it, you know, isn't it tiring to do this? She said, it is very tiring because I sit in this position for hours. And let's move on to the next one, Giselle. All right, so there is that she's finishing her glide through with, it's essentially like a very shallow plate, a very shallow ladle. And this is what she does. And it's a very, very humble situation, as you can see. A very simple one too. Let's go to the next slide. And after they are lifted from the cooking and then they are dried briefly, then they are moved to these drying mats. These things are, you know, they're so cute, right? You just want to like decorate your house. They look like something you could like buy at Cost Plus or something, but they have like, they're fabulous because they're rather porous. And so traditionally rice paper would be dried in the sun this way. And so it's a cooked rice product. So what you just saw is like going from soaked rice to a rice batter that's ground and then cooked and then dried. That's why it's really like this handy wrap, right? Because all you have to do is rehydrate it. And that is why when you take a look at rice papers that are commercially made, there's always like this kind of beautiful waffle pattern on it. And that's because that the manufacturer is trying to mimic the look of traditional rice paper, which is dry on these mats here. So what we buy at the regular American supermarket, and Giselle, we can I think that's probably all the images. So those images go back to 2002, 2003. And people who have traveled to Vietnam have come back and I'll get an email, be like, oh, can you tell me, how to make rice paper at home? And my answer is no, because that's something that is really best left to the pros. In Vietnam, people buy rice paper, and rice paper that are artisanally made by someone like that woman is a specialty. It's a craft. It's not something people do at home. It looks so simple, right? But that's all she makes. And sometimes you just gotta leave something there. Leave the table a little hungry, and it's okay to buy a commercial product. And there are times when people will try to make, rice sheets at home, but they're not going to make it for rice paper necessarily unless they're selling them a particular kind. So now what I want to do is to just kind of walk through the different kinds of rice paper that you may find. So let's first talk about what you can get at your supermarket, because I'm really into, gathering ingredients. And when I published my first book, Into the Vietnamese Kitchen, the rice paper was pretty much mostly rice. And traditional rice paper, frankly, was a pain in the butt to work with because it took forever to rehydrate. And what you would have to do is set up this vessel of hot water, and then someone would have to have a kettle of boiling water. And if the water cooled down too much, then someone would have to run into the kitchen and get that kettle of water and refill it. But what happened since when my first book came out, that was 2006, when Into the Vietnamese Kitchen came out, until now, which is my recent book, Vietnamese Food Any Day, rice paper manufacturing and formulation has changed a lot. So when you go to your regular supermarket, what you're going to find is oftentimes this brand. I'm going to also lay it down so that you can see. This is what you'll see at a lot of regular American supermarkets. And it's a fine rice paper. And if you look in the back in terms of the ingredients, what you'll see listed is tapioca starch, rice starch, salt, and water. So it's not really necessarily rice paper anymore, but we think of it as rice paper because that's how it has been translated into English. In Vietnamese, we're just it's bánh tráng. My mother, who's 86, complained. In fact, she complained just the other day how bánh tráng is no longer made with rice, but she's got all this tapioca stuff, which is fabulous for rolls in the sense that the tapioca makes the rice paper a lot easier to rehydrate and a lot faster. So no one has to run to the kitchen to refill the water vessel with hot water. There's also brown rice paper. And this is what it looks like. This is a company that is based, I think, in California, out of Northern California, and Star Anise Foods. And it's a very nice product if you are interested in a product that has brown rice in it. And what is the ingredients? The ingredients include brown rice, cassava. Cassava is another term for tapioca, organic green tea, and salt. I don't know what the green tea does, okay? I think they're just putting it in there for, I don't know, phytochemicals or something. So those are two brands that you're gonna find. Now, if you're shopping at a Vietnamese market, the selection is gonna be a lot broader. So you're going to find rice paper that may seem a little bit, I don't know, sketchy, but don't be afraid of it because products that have been exported to America are good ones. So you'll find something like this, which is a product of Vietnam. It also has tapioca and rice. You'll also find brown rice paper too. You'll also then find rice paper that is specialty rice paper. So this rice paper is rice paper benjang jiang jiaza. So this means rice paper, jiang means frying, jiaza means for the rice, for the fried rolls, the imperial rolls, those things that you would get in your rice vermicelli bowls at a Vietnamese market. So these have been formulated especially for frying, whereas some of the other ones that don't say anything about frying, or just remember jiaza. That's the term for the fried rolls. If they don't mention anything about the fried rolls, that means that they're just for regular fresh rolls or unfried rolls. And also they'll say in English, aha, special rice paper for frying, right? But specifically because it's a little tricky to make the fried one. So if you're, all of this has come out maybe like the last 3 to 4 years. Things have changed a lot in terms of rice paper. There's a lot of different kinds of rice paper. And if you happen to go to a really hardcore Vietnamese market or Chinese market, you're going to find this brand. This is the Three Ladies brand. And they are a very reliable brand. I buy their rice products all the time. And the rice paper is consistently good. And so this is a brand that I enjoy using. So they come in different sizes. The small ones, the size of a corn tortilla. The medium ones, the size of a flour tortilla. And then big boys, this is like super burrito size, okay? And this is super thin rice paper. And the super thin ones, you can make the rice rolls and then you can cut them into smaller portions. Whereas flour tortilla size, as well as corn tortilla size, these are for individual rolls. I would say like the small ones and the big boys are more like for, I don't know, advanced, graduate level, because the small ones are a little bit difficult, but they're awfully cute. They're difficult to manipulate. So if you're going to be starting out, I would work with the medium ones. And you can order these online if you want to, but the Three Ladies are definitely a rice paper that you can find in many, many Asian markets. Now, the other thing is that if you're traveling to Vietnam, so there are certain things that I buy in Vietnam. Black peppercorns are one of them, different spices like that, as well as rice paper, because there are certain brands of rice paper that or just certain types that are just not available in the US. So I'll go to like a market and a wet market or a supermarket and see what they've got. So it varies. So this particular brand, let's see, I'm going to show it right up here. This, it doesn't say Bánh Tráng because it says it's from Hanoi, right? So up in Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam, Bánh Tráng is sometimes called Bánh Đa. So this is the other thing. So, if your Vietnamese is a little rusty, it's okay. Ask like someone, what you're saying, what the deal is. But this is a particular kind of rice paper where you barely need any water. You just actually have to like brush some water on there, or sometimes you don't even need any water, and the moisture from the filling is enough to soften the rice paper because it's practically like tissue thin. So these are something that I bring back from Vietnam. If I know someone who's traveling, I'll get, just go to the market and just buy me a bunch of rice paper, like the coolest kind you can get, and pay the highest prices because it's really not that expensive. And then here's a kind that is from the central region of Vietnam that my sister brought back for me. And this is not, even though this is Bánh Tráng, which means like, it is a rice-based spreaded out kind of rice sheet that's been dried. It's really for making like, not rice paper rolls, but just like rolls. And so this is a different kind of Bánh Tráng, all different kinds. And then this is a type of rice paper that I know, like at a market, you'd be like, oh my gosh, it doesn't quite come in any kind of, packaging, and it looks kind of sketchy because someone tied it together with like jute or some kind of string. But this stuff, I use it for frying, and it was just spectacular. So if you're shopping when you're in country, ask a vendor, ask someone who's with you who speaks Vietnamese to help you source really, really interesting products that you may not be able to find in Vietnam. A product such as this one is something from Hanoi. It's something that you can't necessarily find in Saigon because the country, a lot of things just are made in very, very small quantities. So, it's like I'm kind of like obsessed with rice paper, and I thought, you know what? Of all the people that I can kind of like let my freak fly on a strange Asian product, you're it. Slow foodies. All right. So finally, the other thing that I wanted to show you is rice paper that is not necessarily rice paper, but the same concept. So because these are not meant for wrapping, these are meant for toasting. So they are called bánh đa in northern Vietnam. In southern Vietnam, we would call them bánh tráng nướng. So nướng means to grill or to roast. And what happens is once that you cook these up, and you can do it in a toaster oven, a regular oven, in a barbecue, over a grill, not directly on a flame though, they turn into this. And they get really, really crispy and crunchy. And what we do is we break them up and into shards like this, and we serve them almost like a cracker or a chip to scoop food up with. And as you can see, like once that it's like puffed rice. It really, really gets nice and bubbly once it gets toasted. And it's also crumbled up into, for example, Hanoi style chả cá. So that's the turmeric fish dish with the noodles and stuff. And it adds little crunchy bits. So kind of like, I don't know, chicharrones, but without the pork aspect to it. And you can, you can substitute, like I say in my book, Vietnamese Food Any Day, you can substitute just rice crackers that you buy at a regular market. And one of my favorite brands is the Trader Joe's one. My husband swears by it. My parents like it too. So you don't always need to get these. These are very, very difficult to get. And I told you I was going to show you guys some stuff that came from an undisclosed location, and this is one of them. So these are made stateside. I don't buy these in Vietnam because they're kind of hard to transport. So I buy these stateside. My sister buys them from people that she never tells me where they're located. So undisclosed location, she goes to these people and she purchases a bunch for our family. So the way these are made is the same process as what you saw earlier at the top of the session, except the batter is a little thicker. So that once that you dry these, and these were dried, I don't think you can see them on the screen, but they were dried pretty much like not on bamboo, but probably on some kind of window screen because the pattern is totally different, but same method. Soak rice, grind rice, make a batter with some old rice, and then spread it very thinly, dry it, let it cook, and then dry it in the sun. And this is truly an artisanal product made in Vietnam. Again, I wouldn't say like, hey, let's all like, slow food, let's, make these bánh đa, because it's something that requires a lot of calibration and a lot of practice. So I know my limits. I can make things like tofu. I wrote about that in my book, Asian Tofu, and that's kind of like something that I can handle. I can make dumplings, skins, but I'm not going to tackle this because I go through this stuff so quickly. So, all of those are like the variety of rice paper. Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you. So this kind of rice paper that you will find at Asian markets, like Vietnamese markets, there's typically sesame seeds in there. So white sesame seeds or black sesame seeds. And so they get really nice and rich and toasty tasting when you toast them up and use them. And once that they're toasted, you can keep them around for, days. So what we're going to do now that you are totally, aware of different kinds of rice paper is I want to walk through how to roll your own, right? So when you're starting out, and actually, even though I'm not someone who's a beginner with rice paper, but this is my go-to brand, okay? And it's the Three Ladies, and I don't represent them. I just think that they're a very, very good product. And they represent the Southeast Asian ladies and the Vietnamese ladies in her traditional dresses in the middle. And so it's a very, very good product in the sense that it's not too thin and it's not too thick. And it rehydrates very, very nicely. So let's go through, first of all, how you're going to rehydrate rice paper. So you want you have two options, something that is relatively low and wider than your rice paper. So this is an 8-inch round. So I would go with say a 10-inch vessel. It could be a pie plate. It could be a skillet. It could be a casserole container. Or you can, if you're really hardcore, you get this. This is what is called a rice paper caddy. This is really available at hardcore Vietnamese markets. This is the rice paper. Sometimes they're marketing under a product name called Mr. Rice Paper Roll or something like that. But regardless, you can just use a skillet, all right? And I'm gonna fill that container with some water that I brought to a boil and then let cool. This is actually a little too hot. You want it to be roughly like bathtub water. So, bath water temperature. Because if it's too hot, it actually makes things a little bit harder to control. It goes by too quickly. And then all of a sudden, you've got my potential disaster. So the thing is, so I'm just going to let that cool for a little bit. So I'm going to pull this in camera a little bit. And so what am I going to fill with? You can fill rice paper rolls, and these are the unfried ones. We call them in Vietnamese gỏi cuốn. Gỏi means salad in Vietnamese. Cuốn means to roll. So literally these translate into rice or as salad rolls. They are oftentimes presented in English as summer rolls or fresh rolls. Why? I don't know. Because we eat them year round. They're not like a Chinese spring roll, which is oftentimes associated with the Chinese Spring Festival, Lunar New Year. And I don't know why, one would call them a fresh roll versus like an old roll. They're just gỏi cuốn salad rolls, or you can just say rice paper roll, and you're good. And typically, the filling that you get at, say, a lot of Vietnamese restaurants is going to have like shrimp, right? And then there'll be like thinly sliced pork. There'll also be noodles, lettuce, and herbs. What I did today was really just gather things that I saw at the supermarket that was like really fresh. I also went ahead and frankly raided my fridge. Okay, so what did I find in my fridge? I found some poached chicken from I made up some chicken pho the other day from my book, the Pho Cookbook. I used like the pressure cooker, and I had like a bunch of meat left over, so I just like hand shredded some. That's there. I had some shrimp in the freezer, some locally purchased shrimp. There it is. And then I also had some bean sprouts that were like super fresh, but I'm always afraid like bean sprouts, because it's really hard to get good ones, that were going to go bad. So I just went ahead, I put these into a bowl, poured hot water over them, let them wilt for maybe like 30 seconds, and then drain them. So what I have is essentially something that can be replaceable for noodles. So if you want to go with the traditional noodle, you want to use rice noodles. Sometimes they're called rice vermicelli, but vermicelli is a little too small. These are just these round rice noodles. This is a brand that I like to get at an Asian market. They have a pagoda on them, and people refer to them as like the pagoda brand. I'm just going to let that sit there. This is also another brand. Again, the three ladies, but this comes in easy to manage actual sticks instead of flats. And then you can also, if you find this product, these are really, really fabulous because they come in small portions, like so. So that it's almost like a very tiny ramen noodle package quantity. And you can, cook off like 2 or 3 of them. Now, the other thing I want to tell people is that with those noodles, you got to boil them. Do not soak them. You soak them, those noodles will taste like fiber optics. And I've had so many people that I would go and to like nice, events where people are cooking my food and they say, oh, I want to make like, your rice noodle thing. And I say, great, awesome. And then I get there and they're like, the noodles are ready. And I say, I want to look at the noodles. And all they've done is soak them. No soaking, okay? You've got to boil them because then the noodles are, it's a pasta product. And so the thicker ones that are used for Vietnamese food are the size of a capellini noodle, so angel hair pasta, or say as thick as spaghetti that you would find in noodle soups like bún bò Huế. And we don't use the really fine ones, the vermicelli size, despite the fact that everybody calls it vermicelli, okay? So if you want to go the traditional route, get yourself some rice noodles at a regular supermarket. They're called My Fun, and those will work fine. Cook them off. They can sit for hours. Do not refrigerate them because they will harden. But use them if you want that to go that route. If you're low carbonate or if you just have bean sprouts that you really want to like deal with, like I do, then you can just go ahead and blanch them. Now, everything that I have shown you has been relatively flat. So the shrimp, I poached them off and then I cut them into symmetrical halves like so that they would later on really lay flat. That's the rule, which is why for the greens part of the filling, I've got like baby lettuces. You can use a whole leaf lettuce, which is traditionally used, but gosh darn it, baby lettuce is fabulous. Here in Santa Cruz where I live, like we have farmers who are growing this stuff, delicious stuff, and it's pre-washed, so I don't have to mess with it. Here's a little Persian cucumber that is cut into very thin pieces. The beautiful thing about Persian cucumbers, and I'm telling you this because after all these years of cooking, I kind of get lazy. Persian cucumbers, you just scoop out the seeds and then slice them into small pieces. Carrot, and today I had some inspiration at my local market, and snow peas, right? All you have to do is just stack them on top of each other, chop, 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 and then you have really nice, thin, julienne-ish pieces to work with. And then herb-wise, I've got cilantro, I've got some beautiful basil that I'm growing right now that's supposed to be a perennial for pesto. I've also got Thai basil that is going to flower and seed soon, so I picked that. Here's some lemon basil. Mrs. Burns is what I grow. And then in here, there's also a little bit of mint. Choose what you want in terms of the herb. So now, when you go to soak rice paper, this is what you're going to do, whether you're using caddy like this or a skillet. Please note what I'm doing. I am rotating the rice paper just to moisten it just a few seconds before I lay it down on my surface. No letting it sit in the water and letting it soak up the water, because once it does that, it becomes overhydrated and you can't really work with it. It won't stick. I can look at a photograph of a magazine article, for example, and tell you that the rice paper was over soaked because it's not clinging. So what we're waiting to do is for the rice paper to turn kind of tacky. Now, if you're like me at this point, gosh, I'm just gonna like have a drink. I'm telling you this because you can set up everything, all the filling, get the rice paper out, invite friends over. Well, can't really invite friends over, but let's say your family members that are cohabitating with you or your roommates, and then you can go to town and make up rice paper rolls, and they do it so that it's not a lot of work for you. And when you go to fill the rice paper, and I know it's good because it's like tacky. Tacky is good in this regard. I'm going to lay down some greens in the lower half of the rice paper. And then I'm going to put down the bean sprouts or noodles. Let's say I want a little herbage. So when you lay down the herbs, don't put the entire sprig down there. If you do that, you're going to end up probably flossing with your herbs. You just want to tear up the leaves or leave them whole if they're small, say like this mint is just really tiny. Here's some Thai basil flowers that I'm just going to add to it. You're making essentially like a little salad, right? So then let's just add some color here. And color is very important in this dish because there's really not that much going on, right? And it's a very simple thing. So going to pick up the bottom, roll it over. And at this point, I can keep talking to you because I have secured the roll. I'm going to fold over the two ends like so. And now you can add your bling. And the bling comes in the form of shrimp. Today, I'm going to put these down. And you see how I'm kind of putting them in there very snugly because I'm going to roll this up. And my little shrimpies, like, I'm going to like show, let's see, sorry, here, you can see it right here. Tucking it in at the end like that allows the shrimp to peek through so that you really get, that beautiful thing in a rice paper roll. You can tuck seared mushrooms in there. You can tuck whatever that you like, tofu. You can really be artful with this because that little trick that I did at the end of really, waiting until I put that special blingy part of the rice paper in, or the roll in, is where it's going to show off. This is very humble, simple food. And so whatever beauty you can bring to it, and by golly, if you don't want to do this, you can just roll it up and then just eat it, and that's fine. No one's going to say anything because you made your roll, and you're going to just keep practicing. So I'm not going to keep rolling anymore because that's not what we're here for necessarily. But why don't we go ahead and take some questions, Giselle?
A couple folks are wondering what kind of sauce you would recommend with a roll like the one you just made.
You can sauce it up with the ubiquitous Vietnamese nước chấm, which is the dipping sauce with, with the lime juice, the sugar, the fish sauce, and you want to dilute that. So what you want to do is create a limeade first. So have your fresh lime juice with sugar and warm water, make a limeade that you like, then add your fish sauce. And if that limeade, before you add the fish sauce, if that limeade is a little bitter, because, if you made a lot of margaritas, lime really like kind of varies and can be bitter, add a whisper of unseasoned rice vinegar, and that'll just kind of round things out. Or apple cider vinegar will work too. And then once that you're satisfied with that, and you've got like an amber color dipping sauce, then you can add your chilies and your garlic. You can add your Sriracha if you want to, or make some homemade chili garlic sauce. I've got like this great recipe that's like in Vietnamese food any day. That's like super, super duper easy. And right now, chilies are in season still. So like make up a batch so that you'll have it like all through winter. So that's one sauce. You can also do a hoisin and garlic sauce, hoisin peanut sauce if you want to. One of the sauces that I kind of like a lot, that's very easy to do, is hoisin, sriracha, and tahini. And the tahini mimics that combination mimics this particular roll that I like to eat in southern Vietnam called bò bia. And that's like a Chinese Vietnamese take on a Singaporean roll. I know that's very complicated, but that's another one. You can make a tamarind dipping sauce. So there are a lot of options. For this one, you can make the lime one or the hoisin one, and you are good to go.
Excellent, excellent, thank you. And now we have many questions, so we'll jump in. I love the tip about the lime juice. That's really helpful. Let's see, how far in advance can you make something with rice paper?
Oh yeah, totally. So you're entertaining, you want to show off your abilities, right? You can make them, I would say, up to 4 hours in advance. So the reason being is that you refrigerate rice paper, and if any of you have purchased rice paper rolls at a supermarket from like the grab and go area, you know that the roll, if they've been refrigerated for too long, the rice paper tastes like, frankly, you're chewing plastic wrap, because rice will go ahead and harden under refrigeration. So when you make them in advance, you can do this thing where, so I'll like have the rice, the rolls, and then I actually like arrange them in sort of a daisy pattern with like the rice paper being with the petals so that they only touch at the corners. And then I'll put plastic wrap or film over them, or wax paper works well, parchment works well, just so that there's very little air moving through there, so that prevents drying. Another way that people go is that they will line them up like right next to each other like that, and then they weave plastic wrap through them, but I think that's kind of unsightly. But that's an option, because then you can just tell your guests, well, you can just pick it up, and then like pull on the plastic wrap or something, but that's a lot of plastic. So those are two options. And again, it's about 4 hours. You can push it depending on the kind of rice paper that you use, to see how long you can make them in advance. But what you can do to save time is to prep all the fillings and the sauces in advance. And the other thing is, folks, really have people come over and have them roll their own, because that's what my family does. We do not like roll up, a bunch and put them out unless it's for a party or something.
Excellent, that's helpful. And a couple more questions on what you put into those rolls. What do you do to blanch or to prep the filling of the roll? Did you blanch the carrots? Did you do anything else with that, or would you if you were putting different stuff in there?
So so I talked about the bean sprouts, right? And I talked about the noodles, the shrimp. So bring salted water to a boil, and then your shrimp has been peeled, not deveined yet. And throw the shrimp in, pull them off heat, and then wait for the shrimp to curl up into a little C curve, or chop, do a little infant pose, and they're like nice and bright orange, and then you can drain them at that point. If you and then what you do is you cut the shrimp horizontally, and I don't have any cooked to show you, but essentially you want to lay your shrimp down. So let's pretend like these are my 2 shrimp halves, okay? And so here's my little, oh, thank you. So here's my little shrimp guy. And then, so I'm gonna put him flat on my work surface. And then I'm going to grab my knife, and it's sort of like cutting a bagel, you guys, and then you're just gonna like kind of saw your blade across the way. And because you press down on the shrimp, the knife blade is able to have some leverage so that it moves all the way across the way. And then at the end of the line, you have your 2 shrimp halves. And if there is any kind of yucky vein inside, you can just use the tip of your knife to dislodge it and then keep it on your cutting board. The reason why you can devein your shrimp ahead of time, but if you do, what happens is the back of the shrimp butterflies a little bit, it peels back when it cooks. So then that adds a little bit of like this bump. So for these rolls, you'll see that the Vietnamese cut for the shrimp is always like this very, very flat cut. Now, if you buy pre-cooked shrimp, which is you can do in your own kitchen, I just don't like the flavor of them that much. You can just go ahead and disregard everything that I just told you and just like cut them in half horizontally, because sometimes we just need to put some food in our mouths and we just need to like, get it going. So it's all right.
Excellent. Thanks, Andrea. Let's see. This is a good question. Is there a right and wrong side to the paper when you're using it?
Every single time I do a demo, I think about that, because there is sort of like a more slippery side to the rice paper when you feel it. And so I tend to put the smoother side down. But I don't think that it matters, to tell you the truth. I really don't. But I tend to put the smoother side down. So, try it.
Try that.
I really
it worked for you.
It's worked for me. So.
Great. I trust that. Excellent. Lisa's wondering if she's going to use tofu with rice paper, if there's a particular type that's best to use, type of tofu.
Sure. You can get, you can just pan fry some tofu. So I'll take like extra firm tofu and then cut it into slabs, say like, 3/4 inch slabs, and then I'll lightly salt them and let them drain for 15 minutes or so. Then I'll pan fry it, and then that allows me to thinly slice it. Some people like to, for richness, use deep fried tofu, which can be made from, firm or extra firm tofu. You can also use baked tofu. So like super, super compressed tofu. And you can purchase that at an Asian market, a Chinese market. It's typically vacuum sealed. You can buy super firm tofu that is sold vacuum sealed, and then again, cut it into slabs. And then you can marinate it and then cook it off if you like if it's marinated. You can also just kind of pan fry it to like this really nice crisp. The thing about the super firm is that it is so firm, like overcooked pork loin or chicken breast, that you can slice it very thinly. It's not going to absorb a lot of flavor though. I'm just going to tell you that, because it's like really, really solid protein pressed together. But in terms of like, the different kinds of tofu, you can go that way. You can also, like, if you're at an Asian market, there are these, and I'll pull this out of my freezer. I guess it's kind of a good thing that you're at home with me. I can just like, hey, I'm just going to show you what's in my kitchen. So this is sushiage, and they're like these, tofu pockets that you can get. And they're deep fried, and they're typically used for sushi making, right? But you can use these for rice paper rolls too. So you want some richness. You don't just want to put like uncooked, not uncooked, but just like tofu that's undressed. Because tofu is a food that you can just like go ahead and eat as is, because it's cooked. But you want to give that tofu some character before you wrap it up.
Perfect. Thank you. I've got a couple other good questions for you. How long do the rice papers keep in the pantry? Do you keep them in your pantry? One person has said that their local grocery store keeps them in the refrigerator, and I was wondering if that's necessary. If they're dry, I don't imagine so. But how long could you keep the rice paper in your pantry?
So think about those images that I showed you in terms of how the rice paper is made. It essentially is like a pasta product, right? And so you can keep it indefinitely. Keep it, in an airtight container. I use, I use Ziploc bags, and I keep them in my pantry, and they've lasted. Some of these things are well aged. Let me just put it that way. Some of the stuff that I really cherish a lot. Now, in terms, so it's room temperature, airtight container once that you've opened it up. I, have not adhered to expiry dates on these things because, again, they last a long time. You just have to be careful if they break or something, then, that's no bueno. The ones that are refrigerated. So I've seen that refrigeration in New York Chinatown with certain kinds of rice papers, but in the main, they're stored at room temperature.
Perfect. Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about other things you like to make with rice paper?
Sure. So, so aside from the rolls, they're the fried ones that I talk about, and that's like really it's a little fussy to fry rice paper, but nowadays in America, a lot of the Vietnamese rolls are fried with a wheat-based roll, similar to a Filipino lumpia skin or a Shanghai spring roll skin. And purists like my mother and me, we like the rice paper because there's a certain tang and chew. They're chewy crisp. They're not totally crisp and crunchy. So so deep frying them is really great. You can make these rolls, but anything can be rolled up essentially. Like if you're grilling something, like one of my most favorite things to do is just like grill a whole fish, set it out with, the dipping sauces, the herbs, the lettuce, and all that other stuff. And then that's my Sunday meal. And, fortunately for living in California, we can like grill year round pretty much. We can roast the fish, you can grill, you can just roll whatever that you want in rice paper, so long as you remember that it's like flat and light, bendable. Oh, and someone asked about cooking, like how the vegetables are cooked. These carrots, if you have time to blanch them, fabulous. If not, it's okay. Just kind of really thin. And the peas, I kept them raw because I like the crunch.
Perfect. Thank you. And let's see, Sony has asked about brown rice paper rolls, and do they sort of work as well and roll as easily?
They work just great. So either this brand, the Happy Pho brand, or then there's like this other brand, Twin Rabbit. So they work just fine. I haven't had any problems with them. They don't really seem to have like a different flavor to me, to tell you the truth. So they're good. Now, when you're grocery shopping, you guys, you're just gonna like buy whatever that you find at your supermarket. If you are at an Asian market, a Chinese market, the brand that you're going to go for is the Three Ladies brand, which is also sold at places like Cost Plus and online. This is a very good brand, and they sell rice noodles for pho, pad thai, and stuff. But the rice paper is excellent. So that's really the brand that you're going to go for most of the time. Now, if you set foot into a Vietnamese grocery store, you're going to see a whole other variety of range of rice paper brands, and then just try them. They don't cost that much. And it's just kind of fun.
Perfect. I knew I recognized that Three Sisters package, and it's definitely Cost Plus. I was like, I think that looks familiar. Great. One more question. If Cornelia is wondering if you can sort of repeat or reiterate what you said about the noodles you soak versus the ones that you boil.
Right. So these noodles for rice paper rolls, and for anytime like in Vietnamese that you see the word word bun, spelled B-U-N, bun refers to round rice noodles. They unfortunately are translated into English as rice vermicelli, okay? But vermicelli means like, little worms and a very fine pasta. This is more like capellini. And so more angel hair, a little bit bigger. And that's the size that's used for a lot of Vietnamese foods. And from there, the sizes, for example, this particular package is is marked as fine. There's fine, medium, and large. You cannot soak them. You need to boil them. So for Vietnamese dishes, for other dishes, you may soak them and then you stir fry them. But in the main, for like these rolls, for your rice noodle bowls, you're going to boil those noodles, drain them, and then let them cool. During that cooling process, what happens is the rice starches, they kind of, they start sticking and they really, you know, get tacky and stuff. And I know that sounds like, oh my God, what a pain in the butt. How am I going to manipulate those noodles for my food? Well, the starch is there so that they'll soak up the sauce. So if you just soak them, and some packages tell you to do that, they're not going to absorb any sauce because that starch has not really like bloomed and hydrated and become beautiful. They will taste like fiber optics and be highly unpleasant. So boil them, you guys, and get like, you know, look for capellini size. And if you at the store, you cannot find like, you know, if I'm shopping at like a regular grocery store and I can't find the noodles that I want in the Asian section, I'm going to head over to the gluten-free pasta section and look for an Italian brand called Jovial. It's all brown rice, and I buy the capellini size, and it's absolutely beautiful for a lot of Vietnamese foods. Straight replacement.
Excellent. That is enlightening. I have definitely had more than one roll. I keep dipping and I'm just sliding off. I want to get so I spoon the sauce into the roll. But this is a great tip. Excellent. Thank you, Andrea. I'm going to end with one question. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question. I think there's a few in here that will be answered with one of Andrea's many books, but I think this is a nice question to end on because I want to respect your time and let you go. Romy's asking which Vietnamese foods are overlooked in the US that we should explore more. So maybe a little bit of like, what are some of your favorites? I mean, you've written multiple books on Vietnamese foods. I imagine there's a huge array, but maybe something we should look out for trying our own kitchen.
Well, you know, there are 3 gateway foods, right? That people try and then they fall in love with Vietnamese food. And so we're talking the rice paper rolls, the banh mi sandwiches, and pho. And so let's say you want to graduate to something new. I would try bún bò Huế, which is a central Vietnamese noodle soup of like beef and pork. And it's like a total brow wiper. It's like super duper spicy. There's lemongrass in there, chilies, and herbs, and it's kind of dark and inky. It's like this gutsy food that totally embodies Southern Vietnamese people and their personalities. There are, I think that Central Vietnamese food is really coming up a lot. And so you can go to restaurants that are named, for example, Huế restaurants, and they'll have a lot of little dumplings. One is called bánh bèo, which are these little steamed rice pancakes served in small dishes. Another one that I think people should try is bánh xèo, sizzling rice crepes, which you can totally make. And I, like in my first book, I had this recipe where you soak your own rice because I was like really like gonna, you know, I was totally slow fooding it back then. But now realizing, you know, more people want to make Vietnamese food, the recipe that I really support people, you know, trying out when they're new to sizzling rice crepes is in Vietnamese Food Any Day. And that's where you're just gonna get like Bob's Red Mill white rice flour and hydrate it in a particular manner. And that makes this beautiful crunchy crepe. It's yellow from turmeric. There's no egg in there. There's a beautiful fragrance from coconut milk. And then you can fill it with whatever you want. There's typically pork and shrimp and mushroom, but you can make a vegetarian version with tofu and mushroom if you'd like. And then it's eaten with herbs and lettuce and dumped into the nuc dum dipping sauce. And it's absolutely spectacular. And it's so much fun to make too. And then there are all these different dishes that are made with Vietnamese caramel sauce, which is not something that you would put on ice cream, but it's actually nearly burnt sugar. And it is fabulous for developing, you know, this savory, sweet note in braised and simmered dishes, such as like pork with caramel sauce. I just, yesterday on Instagram, I put this thing up with like braised ribs that I absolutely love. And there's like shrimp with that sauce plus like coconut water. So all different kinds of Vietnamese foods. And Giselle, I could just like keep going on and on, but it's time to go, everyone, and cook and eat.
You've written 3-4 cookbooks specifically on Vietnamese food, so I imagine they've got a whole bunch that you can mention. But that's great. That makes me hungry. I saw those ribs on your Instagram yesterday, and I was like, wow, those look amazing. Your recent book, Vietnamese Food Every Day, looks fantastic and seems to me like a great introduction to that and to kind of exploring beyond those 3 gateways. I'm personally really excited to get that banh mi cookbook onto my shelf. That was my gateway and falling in love with this cuisine. So we will send a follow-up email to everyone who's on this call or registered for this webinar, and we'll put links to all of Andrea's books so you can get some on your shelf in your kitchen. There's a few folks in here who are mentioning that they have your books and they love them. So that's great. Some of your fans. Thank you for that. Thank you for everything you've shared with us about rice paper, getting us excited about exploring more Vietnamese food, and for your time today, Andrea. It's been really, really fun having you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Giselle.
Thanks, Andrea. See you later.
See ya.